few decades ago, Singapore was a small island with almost no natural resources. Today, it is one of the world's most important trading and logistics hubs, connecting global markets through the power of geography, infrastructure, and smart investment. Its success was not built on oil, gold, or vast territory. It was built on location, and the ability to turn that location into economic power.
We should build on what we have today. We should affirm and reinforce what works well for Singapore.
Now, the Philippines is trying to do something similar. Stretching from Subic and Clark to Manila and Batangas, a project known as the Luzon Economic Corridor is attracting the attention of Japan, the United States, and a growing group of international partners. At first glance, it looks like another infrastructure project. But behind the ports, railways, industrial parks, and investment plans lies a much bigger story. This is a race to turn one of the most strategic locations in the Indo-Pacific into a major center for manufacturing, technology, and global trade.
Several countries have expressed interest in contributing to the Luzon Economic Corridor's infrastructure and economic development.
The Philippines is the latest country to join the US-led Pax Silica initiative. The two countries will build an industrial hub in what's known as the Luzon Economic Corridor.
The question is simple. Why are so many countries suddenly investing in the same stretch of Philippine territory? The answer begins with a global shock that changed how the world thinks about supply chains. For decades, Subic Bay was known for warships. It was one of America's most important military bases in Asia, a place associated with security, strategy, and naval power. But today, a different kind of competition is taking shape. Instead of warships, governments are talking about factories. Instead of military deployments, they are discussing semiconductor supply chains, artificial intelligence, ports, railways, and investment. And at the center of that competition sits one island, Luzon. That shift became clear in Tokyo. President Marcos and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi did not describe the Luzon Economic Corridor as another infrastructure project. They described it as a future world-class economic hub.
For the productive discussions that reaffirm the strength and bright future of the Philippines-Japan relations as we continue to strive to reach even greater heights. Arigato gozaimasu.
The plan stretches from Subic and Clark to Manila and Batangas, connecting ports, airports, industrial zones, and major population centers into a single economic network. The priorities are ambitious: modern ports, new rail links, clean energy, digital infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, and semiconductor supply chains. What began as a partnership between the Philippines, Japan, and the United States is also attracting support from countries including Australia, Canada, France, South Korea, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, plans are taking shape for a massive industrial hub in New Clark City focused on industries such as AI and semiconductors. But here is the real question. Why are so many countries suddenly investing in the same stretch of Philippine territory? Why are governments, investors, and technology companies paying attention to Luzon? The answer has less to do with the Philippines itself, and more to do with a shock that changed how the entire world thinks about manufacturing, technology, and supply chains. For decades, the global economy followed a simple formula: build where it is cheapest, manufacture at the largest scale possible, and move products across the world as efficiently as possible. That formula helped turn China into the world's manufacturing powerhouse. By the late 2010s, China was producing nearly a third of the world's manufactured goods and had become deeply embedded in global supply chains. Then came COVID-19. Factories shut down, ports became congested, shipping costs surged, and companies around the world suddenly discovered how dependent they had become on production concentrated in a single country. The shortages affected everything from medical equipment and automobiles to consumer electronics. What looked efficient in good times suddenly looked risky when a crisis hit. The shock did not end with the pandemic. The rivalry between the United States and China intensified. Technology restrictions expanded. and semiconductors emerged as one of the most important strategic industries in the world. Modern economies run on chips. They power smartphones, vehicles, data centers, telecommunications networks, artificial intelligence systems, and advanced military equipment. As governments watched supply chains become more vulnerable, new ideas began to emerge. One was China Plus One, where companies keep operations in China but build additional manufacturing bases elsewhere. Another was friendshoring, where supply chains are moved toward trusted partners and allies. The goal behind both strategies is the same: resilience. Countries and companies no longer want critical industries concentrated in one location. They want backup options. That is where the Philippines enters the story. The Luzon Economic Corridor is being built at a moment when governments and businesses are searching for new places to invest, manufacture, and build secure supply chains. This is not just about roads, ports, or industrial parks. It is about positioning the Philippines to capture part of a historic shift in global manufacturing. As supply chains diversify and semiconductor security becomes a national priority for major economies, the countries that can offer stability, connectivity, and trusted partnerships stand to benefit. The Luzon Economic Corridor is designed to make sure the Philippines is one of them. To understand why the Luzon Economic Corridor matters, you have to look at a map. Start at Subic Bay, one of the finest deep water ports in Asia and a location that once hosted one of America's largest overseas naval bases. Move north to Clark, home to a growing international airport and vast areas of land available for industry and logistics. Then follow the route south through Metro Manila, the country's economic heart, before reaching Batangas, another major port facing some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Separately, these are important locations. Connected together, they become something much more powerful: one corridor, one logistics chain, and one manufacturing ecosystem stretching across the most economically important part of the Philippines. What makes this corridor even more valuable is its location. Luzon sits at the crossroads of the Indo-Pacific, near the sea routes that connect Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, and the wider global economy. Every year, trillions of dollars in trade pass through nearby waters. Goods moving between Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Australia, and the United States all travel through this broader maritime network. The Luzon Economic Corridor is designed to plug directly into those trade flows. Raw materials can arrive through its ports, products can be manufactured and assembled in industrial zones, and finished goods can be shipped back out to global markets. That is why governments and investors see such potential here. The Luzon Economic Corridor is an attempt to turn geography into economic power. If successful, it could transform Luzon into a major hub for manufacturing, logistics, technology, and trade. The question is no longer whether the Philippines sits in a strategic location. It always has. The question is whether it can finally turn that location into a competitive advantage. At first glance, Japan's involvement in the Luzon Economic Corridor looks like a development project. New infrastructure, financing, technology transfers, and investment. But Tokyo is not spending billions of dollars out of charity. Japan has its own strategic interests, and many of them now point directly toward the Philippines. For decades, Japanese companies built some of the world's most efficient supply chains, many of them centered on China. But the world has changed. Today, Japan wants supply chains that are not only efficient, but also resilient. It wants alternative manufacturing locations, secure logistics networks, and trusted partners that can reduce the risks of overdependence on a single country. The Philippines fits that strategy perfectly. The Luzon Economic Corridor helps Japan achieve several goals at once. It creates new opportunities for manufacturing and advanced industries, including semiconductors, one of the most important technologies in the modern economy. It strengthens supply chains connecting Southeast Asia to Japan and other major markets. And it supports the development of ports, transportation networks, and industrial zones that can handle growing trade flows. Just as important, it sits near some of the world's most critical sea lanes. Japan imports much of its energy and depends heavily on maritime trade, meaning stability in the waters surrounding the Philippines is directly linked to Japan's economic security. From Tokyo's perspective, A stronger and more prosperous Philippines helps protect the trade routes, supply chains, and economic networks that Japan relies on every day. That is why Japan's support goes far beyond traditional development assistance. It includes infrastructure investment, industrial cooperation, supply chain partnerships, and even maritime security cooperation. In many ways, the Luzon Economic Corridor has become one of Japan's most important strategic bets in Southeast Asia. Because if the corridor succeeds, the Philippines becomes a key link in the economic architecture that Japan hopes will power the next phase of Indo-Pacific growth. The Luzon Economic Corridor did not emerge by accident. It emerged from a growing partnership between the Philippines, Japan, and the United States. For years, the three countries focused mainly on security cooperation, joint exercises, maritime patrols, defense agreements, and efforts to maintain stability in the Indo-Pacific. But over time, all three reached the same conclusion: military cooperation alone is not enough. A country is stronger when it has modern infrastructure, resilient supply chains, advanced industries, and a growing economy. That is where the United States enters the story. Washington sees the Philippines as one of its most important partners in Southeast Asia, but it also sees an opportunity to help build a stronger economic foundation for the region.
We welcome the U.S. government's pledge of an additional $15 million for private sector development under the Luzon Economic Corridor initiative.
The goal is not simply to construct ports, railways, and industrial zones. The goal is to create supply chains that are more resilient, attract new investment, support high-value industries, and reduce dependence on any single manufacturing hub. That vision aligns closely with Japan's interests and the Philippines' development goals. Together, the three countries are trying to build something larger than an infrastructure project. They are trying to create an economic corridor that strengthens the Philippines while reinforcing a broader network of partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. In many ways, the Luzon Economic Corridor represents a new approach, one where economic growth and security cooperation move forward together. This is where the audience should suddenly realize, wait, this isn't a port project. This is an entire economic ecosystem. When most people hear the words economic corridor, they think of roads and infrastructure. But the real story is much bigger. The Luzon Economic Corridor is designed to attract the industries that will shape the next generation of economic growth. Semiconductors are at the center of that vision. Modern economies run on chips. They power smartphones, vehicles, artificial intelligence systems, telecommunications networks, and advanced technologies. As governments and companies search for more resilient supply chains, the Philippines hopes to position itself as part of the global semiconductor ecosystem. That is one reason why New Clark City and other industrial zones within the corridor are attracting so much attention. The goal is not simply to move goods more efficiently. It is to create an environment where high-value industries can grow. But semiconductors are only part of the picture. Data centers, AI infrastructure, digital connectivity, and advanced manufacturing are all expected to play a major role. The corridor's ports, airports, highways, and future rail links are designed to connect factories with global markets, while investments in undersea cables and 5G networks aim to strengthen digital connectivity. Energy is another critical piece of the puzzle. Large industries require reliable power, which is why renewable energy, offshore wind, and other energy projects are becoming increasingly important. Critical minerals, advanced technologies, logistics, and modern industrial facilities all fit into the same vision. What emerges is not a single project, but an entire economic ecosystem stretching from Subic to Clark through Metro Manila and down to Batangas. That is the scale of what is being proposed. Ports connect to railways. Railways connect to industrial zones. Industrial zones connect to factories. Factories connect to global supply chains. Data centers connect to undersea cables. Energy projects power everything in between. The Luzon Economic Corridor is designed to bring all of these pieces together in one integrated network. 30 years ago, American warships sailed out of Subic Bay, bringing an era to a close. Few could have imagined that decades later, the same region would once again find itself at the center of a major strategic transformation. But this time, it is not warships arriving. It is something different. Factories, supply chains, data networks, infrastructure, investment, and a growing network of strategic partnerships. The story of the Luzon Economic Corridor is no longer about a former naval base or a collection of infrastructure projects. It is about whether the Philippines can turn one of the most strategic locations in Asia into one of the most important economic hubs in the Indo-Pacific. Because in the end, the Luzon Economic Corridor is not really about roads, railways, ports, or industrial parks. It is about where the next generation of Asian growth will take place, where critical supply chains will be built, and where economic competition will increasingly intersect with geopolitics. The opportunity is enormous, but so is the challenge. The plans have been announced, the partners are in place, and the investments are beginning to flow. Now comes the hard part. The question is no longer whether the Philippines occupies a strategic position on the map. It always has. The question is whether it can finally turn that geography into lasting economic power.